tonight we're going to talk about the drafting and editing and publishing and printing and even burning of the Rambam's Mishneh Torah, and we'll present it as a biography. You know, there's conception, pregnancy, adolescence, old age, and so we're going to begin with the following. We're going to begin with this picture. This is the Siyum Rambam that happened in Cairo, in Old Cairo, which is known as Fostat, in Tafshin Memhei. This is the first year of the Siyum Rambam, and Rabbi Hecht on Sunday night referenced this Siyum Rambam, and there are a number of shuls in Old Cairo, and this one is called the Rambam Synagogue. As you can see in the sign, it says Rambam Synagogue. There is a Messiah that the Rambam used to daven in this specific shul in Cairo. And so a number of Lubavitchers went down there and they made a Siyum Rambam with members of the Israeli thing, and maybe some Jews locally who lived there as well. They went back a number of years. Here is the picture from 1987 in the same shul, and you know, some of the same characters who were there in Tafshin Memhei went back and in years after. Here's an outside of the shul, and as you'll see, it says engraved in the stone, Beis Knesses Harav Moshe ben Maimon Harambam. So, and then to the left of that you have in Arabic probably saying something of the same. Now, despite the fact that this shul is attributed to the fact that the Rambam lived there, worked there, there's actually, for the purposes of tonight and the purposes of the Rambam's Mishneh Torah, there's another shul that's not too far from this one that's more important. And this is what's known as the Ben Ezra shul, also in Old Cairo. A very, very beautiful building. And this building that you're looking at right now was restored in the year 1890 on Erech, is when they did a major restoration project. Now you're talking about a shul that's dated to the 900s, so it's there for a long, long time, and finally they say that we need to do a restoration. Now at the time of this restoration, if you're looking at this shul, all the way to the left, you could see, not the left, but if you look up, you see there's a Viber shul on the right and on the left. On the left side, all the way on the opposite end of the way we're looking, on the Mizrach Vant, it's not the Mizrach Vant, but probably in the north wall, there was all the way on the top, there was a little gap. And for as ever long anyone can remember, they are putting their shemus in that gap. And what happened was that in 1890, when they're doing construction on the shul, they obviously have to take everything out, and they take out this pile of shemus. And this becomes known as the story of the Cairo Gniza. Because what you have there is you have documents that are from the 1100s, the 1200s, the 1300s, literally, that are there. And the amazing thing about it is that usually a Gniza, you put it in the basement, and then when it gets too much, you take it out to the cemetery and you bury it. No one knows why, for sure. Here, nothing was ever buried. It just remained in this shul for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so there were many things that were found, Talmudic things, as we're going to see, stuff from the Rambam, so things of items of learning, but also day-to-day manuscripts, letters that people are writing to each other. And this is a fascinating subject for people who are interested in the history of learning about the Jewish community in Cairo for many, many hundreds of years. Here is an image of a man by the name of Solomon Schechter. Solomon Schechter actually comes from Chabad family. His name was Shner Zalman, Solomon Schechter. And he was at the time a professor at Cambridge University, and he went to Cairo and brought back loads of this stuff back to Cambridge, and so a lot of this material is there, but many other libraries around the world have some of this material. There's actually a big tug-of-war between the different libraries, everyone trying to get their hands on the ultimate prize. It was series that you're going to be able to find lost works or different things like that. So here there's an image of him sitting in, I don't know where this is, amongst thousands of documents. He was going through many of these things and he published them. Later he came to America and he was involved with the Jewish Theological Seminary, which is why the schools affiliated with them are called the Solomon Schechter schools. Anyway, one of the most important documents in my mind that was found in this Cairo Gniza is a draft of the Rambam's writing of the Mishneh Torah. Now, how do we know that it's the draft of the Rambam's writing of the Mishneh Torah? There's so much writing in there where the Rambam signs his name. So in other words, the Rambam deposited his shemus into this place as well. No one thought much of it, and it just sat there for hundreds of years. And there is one bundle of papers that is clearly Mishneh Torah and clearly judging against all the other writing that we have from the Rambam, and because of this, we have more writing from him than almost any other Jewish sage, and it's an amazing thing. We have a piece of the Mishneh Torah, and here is one of the pages of this piece is from the Mishneh Torah, and this is, it says on the top, on the left side, that's where we're actually going to be looking. But as you can tell, if you just take a general look at this, you see this is a working draft. There's writing, there's crossing out, there's adding in between the margins, there's adding on the side, and it's a very, very messy document. And we're going to take a closer look at this and compare it to what we actually have. There's about 30 of these pages. This is from Hilchos Chirus, which is in the Sefer of Mishpatim, which is the second to last Sefer of Rambam, and so we have some of those halachas. So let's take a closer look at what's going on here in this draft. So on the left side, I put the page where it says Perek Chi'i, and it takes a while to figure out what's going on here in terms of the handwriting, and let's read. So what you see it says is Hasachir Oichel, a sachir meaning a hired worker eats min from Shahaya Oisa b'mechubar, who was doing in mechubar, and if you were following the Hebrew, that line makes absolutely no sense. Now you see that it's crossed out, but still, what was going on over there? So when you look really well, I don't know if you can see this on the screen, but I tried to make in the second and third word, there are two cross-outs. Because if you look in the Ksav Yad, you'll see that Hasachir only has one line. The first word on the right only has one line going through it. The next two have two lines going through it, and the next one has one. So basically what happens is like this. The Rambam writes, Hasachir oichel min, a sachir, a hired worker, is allowed to eat from, and then he's like, oh, no, I don't want to write that. So he deletes the second and third word. He deletes oichel min, and he starts all over, keeping the first word. Hasachir shahaya oisa b'mechubar, a hired worker who is doing work with material connected to the land, lekarka. Okay, good. Oh no, I don't want to write it that way. Let's start all over. And now he drew one line across the whole thing, and he started all over again. Hapoyalin shehein oisim b'davar shegidulov min haaretz. Workers. He changed it from sachir to poyalin. Workers who are doing something. Labor, it's with something that's connected, growing out of the ground, and then in the margin he adds the words bein b'talush, bein b'mechubar, whether it's still connected or it's already been disconnected. And on the right side, in the vertical, he writes v'adayin lo nigmar malachtoi, and it still isn't finished, meaning there's a labor still necessary to do to get this on people's table. Then mitzvah saseh, there's a mitzvah sheyaniach oisam bala bayis. Lechom imashein oisim boy is a mitzvah that the Baal Abas should allow the workers to eat from the thing that they're doing, and then he added in the margin between the lines, V'hu sheyeh ma'aseh gemar malacha. But this is only if these workers are going to actually be finishing the job. They're doing the last step of the job. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Kisave bekam recha, Kisave bekam ezrecha. So in short, what are we dealing here with? We're dealing here with the halacha that says if you hire workers and they're working in the field, you can't say, keep a muzzle on your mouth, don't eat food. You have to give permission for the workers to eat. And we have this in our Rambam. Now what you see here is the Rambam working on a draft. He's erasing, he's sticking things in between the line. Now if you look at our Rambam and compare it to the finality of this, they are not the same. Here are the differences. On the right side is the same thing that I just showed you before, and on the left side is the Rambam the way we have it in the standard nuschos today. So you'll see Hapoyalim, so change.
The chapter numbers.
Oh, so thank you for pointing that out. Important, the chapters changed here. There was Perek Chi, and here is Perek Shnei Masar. It's the 12th chapter. And pretty much the words here follow what we had there, but there are minor variations between them. So, for example, here it's Hapoyalim, Shein Oisim, but here you see it pretty neat in terms of everything. Also, it's the order is different. If you look at the last line here, V'hu Sheyiyah, this came in at the end, and the final draft that's earlier. So, in other words, for all we know, there's another document that is the missing link between that and what we have today in our actual Rambam. So, and again, there's about 15 or 20 pages of this, so you can go and sit there and compare what we actually have to what the Rambam was working with. What's good about this page is this one has the most deletions, which is why I chose this one, and it's the beginning of a parak. So, in Tav Shalom Ches, the Rebbe was talking about the Madura Kama of Tanya. That was, we have a Tanya, the final product, but what was not so known was that the Alter Rebbe had manuscripts of earlier versions of the Tanya, and the Rebbe said that we should publish those earlier versions. And the Rebbe said over here in Shavuos Lamed Ches, was der Fahrer hat an Ort zu drucken dem Madura Kama von dem Tanya, waren dort in seiner dort Kama v'Kama Chidushim bis zum Klalos Inyan von Mishneh Torah im Koima. So the phrase Mishneh Torah im Koima comes from the Gemara, and where it says is that if a rabbi teaches something and then later he changes his mind and teaches something else, we don't toss out the first version. Mishneh Torah im Koima, we're still gonna keep it. And so the Rebbe was referencing that for the Madura Kama, although the Alter Rebbe changed it, but the initial version also has validity and deserves to be given attention. It said once we have the final version, so you're able to learn how you're supposed to learn. That's very interesting. What the Rebbe is telling us here is when you have the final version of Tanya and you have earlier versions of Tanya, you see how you're supposed to develop an idea. You develop it slowly, and then you have it here, and then you eventually bring it here, and there's value in that. Although we aren't the same as them, but we can learn how we're supposed to develop ideas based on that. So I think that that's appropriate for this idea of seeing the Rambam's earlier drafts. And again, how many Rishonim can we say? How many Gedolei Yisrael, even that lived in the 1800s, we can say that we have early drafts of their works? None. Very, very few. And here, from all people, that it's Dafka the Rambam, who's just this amazing figure in our history, that's pretty special, and it's pretty amazing. Okay, so that's part one.
Did the Rebbe ever comment on the Gniza?
On the what? On the Gniza? Yeah, the Rebbe referenced the Gniza on multiple times, including, we'll talk about it soon, the Rambam's signature, and a few other times as well. Okay, now, the truth is... Yeah, so the drawing of the menorah comes from the Pirush HaMishnayis, and the Pirush HaMishnayis, I don't remember right now if that's from the Geniza or not. I'm sorry, I don't remember. Okay, now, the Rambam had a son by the name of Rabbi Avram, and Avram, he took over the leadership of the Jewish community after his father passed away, and he had shuvas, and they were published in the late 1860s under the title Birkas Avram. Someone found a manuscript 600 years old of Shuvas, not in the Cairo Gniza, somewhere else. And what's very interesting there is that people asked him questions about what his father had written. And you see over here, it says in the Tshuva, the question isn't relevant, he writes, Tiknu hasvarim shalachem. You guys have to fix your manuscripts of the Rambam, shekvar chazar boy, because the Rambam changed his mind. V'tikein hasefer shalai biyada, and he fixed his own version. And he wrote the following quote, and the rest doesn't matter. So in other words, what you're seeing from here was that the Rabbi Avram is saying, testifying, that his father, he wrote the Rambam, and then people started copying and it was disseminated. But it was a living document by his father. And his father noticed something, the Rambam saw something that he didn't like, he went back to his copy and he changed it. So then they're writing a question and he's saying, we already changed it by us, you got to change it in your versions. So not only did we see the earlier draft, you're even able to see that later on the Rambam's constantly tweaking the work that he's doing. He didn't just say, it's good, it's enough. Here's another example from the same Sefer, from the Birkas Avram. This is Shaila Mem Daled. And he writes, this deals with the question of the three ways of doing Kiddushin. There's Kesef, there's Shtar, and there's Bia. And very famously, the Rambam writes that Kiddushay Kesef is Midrabbanan. And this has caused so much rabbinic confusion and commentary throughout the centuries. The Kedusha Kesef Darabanan, how can you say that? We derive it from Kicha. Kicha Mistei Ephraim, for those of you who remember the Gemara. And someone asked Rabbi Avram, the son of the Rambam, about this, and he responded, Lo higiu asfarim shalachem b'toiv. Your manuscripts aren't good. Uchem meduma lanu, and it seems to me that before my father fixed this, then you copied it. That's what he held in the beginning. So in other words, what he's saying here is, the Rambam finished his work, you guys copied it, and then you're learning that now. But really, the Rambam changed his mind later, and he holds Kiddush HaKesef is D'Oraisa, and he changed it in his master document. And he goes on to discuss this, and later on, toward the bottom in the highlighted words, he says, do you want to know what he corrected in his own handwriting? It's like this: Bekesef, oy b'shtar, oy b'biyah, v'shloshton din Torah, and all three of them are din Torah. Interestingly, our Rambams, the way we have them today, we don't have it this way. We have the Rambam holding Kiddush HaKesef D'Rabbanan. In fact, there is no evidence. We don't have any documentary evidence in manuscript or any print for what Rabbi Avraham ben Rambam is saying here. So that's very interesting. Now, the problem is, a lot of the early manuscripts, we don't have the whole thing, so you're missing here and there, so that could play a role, but it is interesting that he is attesting here that his father went along and changed this. That's a second example. And the Rebbe addressed this.
I don't know who he was, but does he have validity to it?
Yeah, I mean, the Rambam's son is by all accounts, a very legitimate Gadol B'Yisrael and scholar, and if you can say, the unfortunate reality for him was that his father was such a superstar, because he's a little dwarfed by his... He just said that he saw it in the Savyat. He said he saw it in handwriting. So he's saying that there was something there. Okay, so... I'll come back to it in a second. So the Rebbe in a Sikha in Tavshim Mem Zayin... The Rebbe in the Sikha in Tavshim Mem Zayin, you see over here, was Magia Sikha, where he spoke about Al Dvar HaMaduris to Sefer Yad LaRambam. And if you look in the second paragraph on the right side, the Rebbe writes over here, we find in the response of the Rambam that he answered to people asking questions. He said, you guys are right. And I think you're right. And I fixed it in my version. You had an earlier version. You got an earlier draft after I changed my mind. And I investigated it again, and they need to fix it. Okay, and then the Rebbe says, and Rabbi Avraham ben Rambam does the same thing, and I just showed you two examples of that, which leads to the following question. What's the question? Left column, but again, all of a sudden you have a question. What happens if the Mechaber, the Ramah, or any later Pasuk made a psak din based on a reading that Rambam himself later went ahead and changed? So what are you supposed to do with that? You're supposed to say, well, the Ramah based his psak din, or the Mechaber based his psak din on Kiddush HaKesef D'Rabbanan, but here we have an attestation that it was changed. So now what happens to the Ramah's psak? What happens to the Mechaber's psak? And the Rebbe gets into that, and it's not the subject for our discussion here. It's a very interesting sikha. The Rebbe has an interesting solution without having too many problems. The Rebbe offers a solution, but that basically says we don't care. In other words, if the Ramah paskin based on the earlier version of the Rambam, and we chose to follow the Ramah, then we're following that, irrespective of the fact that that there is evidence that the Rambam changed his mind later. If you want to get into the why of that, I suggest you learn the Sichos printed in Sefer HaSichos in Tavshim Mem Zayin.
Every Rishon could have changed their mind.
Correct, could have, but here you have evidence for it, though. So here's the Rambam. The Rambam, you have evidence.
So he's saying to dismiss that as well? Oh,
yeah.
Even if
not dismiss that the Rambam changed his mind. Fine, the Rambam changed his mind. Now he holds that Isa. But if the Ramah paskin based on the earlier thing, and we chose that we're following the Ramah, then we're sticking with him, even if he went with version 1 of the Rambam. Okay. So in summary, what do we see so far? We saw a draft of the Rambam, bringing it from an early draft, bringing it into something that's workable, and then we saw even after it's workable and it's disseminated and people are learning it, the Rambam is continuously tweaking and telling everyone you got to change it, you got to update it. It's really a living and breathing document.
Do we have originals of the final version?
What we're going to look now, it gets the closest to that. So what you have over here is in the Bodleian Library in Oxford. So there was this guy named Robert Huntington. Robert Huntington was a koimer, a priest, and he lived in the 1600s, and he went on a mission to Syria. And when he was in Syria, he collected a lot of manuscripts, Hebrew manuscripts. At this time, Christians it's called Hebraism. They're very interested in learning about Judaism, and he goes on a hunt to collect stuff. He collects literally dozens and dozens of Chashva important manuscripts and sends them back to the Bodleian Library in Oxford, where they are today. It's called the Huntington Collection. And in this collection, you have this. You can see over here is, on the right, it says Hilchos Malachim or Mechamayseim. That's not the end of Rambam. This is, you remember in the beginning of Rambam where he tells you all the mitzvahs that are in each section, so that's what's happening on the right side. And then on the left side is where it actually starts. You see it says toward the top, Sefer Hamada, Hilchos Yesod HaTorah, and then further down you see it says Perek Rishon, and you see it says Yesod HaYesodos, V'Amod HaChacham, Leida Sheyesh Sham. Interesting, it says Eleka Matzei Rishon, which is a little different from our version, and there are another few variations. Now this is not the Rambam's handwriting, and again, this didn't come from the Cairo Gniza, this came from somewhere in Syria, from Aleppo in the 1600s, to Huntington, to the Bodleian Library in Oxford today. This is not the Rambam's handwriting, however, and it's only Madan Ava. That's it. It's one book, Madan Ava. Would have been really cool if we would have gone a little further and we'd had Nashim, we would be able to see what the Rambam has here about Kiddushay Kesed.
The screen says the 12th century. That was referring to what?
That's when this was composed. I'll tell you how we know. How do we know this is from the 12th century? How do we know that this was copied in the 12th century? Because, look at the left, this is the end of Sefer Ava. After, right, it says, Nigmar Sefer Sheni Be'ezra Shin Daled Yud, and it's a summary of Skrishma, all the halachas. And then if you remember, at the end of Sefer Ava, you have a long siddur, about all the whole nusach of siddur. So before that, you have the bottom line, and just, if you can't see it, here it is blown up a little bigger. And look what it says in this line. Huga misifri ani Moshe barabi Maimon, and then words that look like a little bit of a scribble, which basically means, I didn't write this, but I am attesting to the fact that this copy here was fact-checked against my copy. I have my master copy. Someone came to my house and said, can I compare I hired a scribe, and my sefer wrote it. And that was a normal thing. Then what you needed to do is another layer. You have a sefer write it, okay, now you need someone to check it. So I'm going to check it against Rambam's original. So someone went, checked it against Rambam's original, and then comes to the Rambam and says, can I please have an autograph? That it indeed was checked against your original, and the Rambam wrote that. Huga misifri, ani Moshe barabi Maimon, what probably says Hatzal over there. Now, what's interesting about this signature, well, that's his handwriting. Yeah, and there are a number of documents with his handwriting. Medical writings, other writings, Jewish writings, so it's not just one or two, three things. This has been known, remember, for a long time now. Already in the 1800s, people became aware that this was an Oxford library. So this has stood up the test of time, meaning scholars and everyone looking at this from every layer, and no one disagrees that this is the Rambam's handwriting.
Maybe it's a fake signature.
Right, so there...
It's so analytical, like, when you do a law school on it.
Right, so I guess anything is possible. I guess the people who really get paid to do this and do this well have come to that thing. Yeah, there's something called experts in Kisvei Yad.
It's not interesting you had time to go and like spot check someone else's.
The Rambam didn't spot check, just to clarify. Someone comes to the Rambam and says, can I bring my sefer and compare it against yours? That's all. So the Rambam lets him into his house and says, sure. And he sits down at the table, he puts down the sefer, and then the guy sits there and goes, Yesoid, Yesoid. How Yesoid is, like that.
So the eyewash you do it?
No, the Rambam is just saying that he did the work based off my book. If you're asking, is it possible that he did a bad job and fell asleep? Well, absolutely. Shai.
I think we said they started printing 1500, 1400.
Right.
So basically, in that period of time, that's how they did it.
Correct.
Everyone hand wrote it.
Correct.
And you had to compare them to make sure that
Correct. Hagar was a standard way of dealing, and there were always mistakes.
That signature doesn't mean that the Rambam actually looked it over first,
I don't think so. It just says Huga Misifri. It's hard for me to imagine that the Rambam would go page by page and check all the nuances of a book.
He clearly says that he didn't.
He's saying Huga Misifri. I have my version. This guy copied, worked off of this. Now, what's interesting that someone I couldn't figure out how to embed a video into this from Chabad.org. There's a video, but there's a video where someone comes by the Rebbe and says we're printing the medical writings of the Rambam, and the Rebbe just says, I found it interesting that, you know that in the Rambam signature he has three versions, the Rebbe says. Sometimes every letter is separate from each other, distinct. Sometimes they flow one into the other, and sometimes it's ein zach. that you can't even tell the difference between the letters. I don't know why the Rebbe told us. Oh, and then the Rebbe adds, "Und es ist b'diuk," because if it's like more halacha, then it's more this way, and if it's a different topic, then it's more the other way. Where is the Rebbe getting this from? It's all Cairo Gniza stuff, because all these signatures are from the Cairo Gniza, and stuff was published 1910, 1920, 1930, 1940, and things like that. So I didn't spend time looking into this, but I do notice is that here you have really all three. Hugam Mitzifri Ani Berabi Maimon is distinct letters. Moshe flows into one. They're three letters, but they're kind of continuous. And the Zatzal over there, if that's what it is almost like one big mess. So it could be that's related. Further research to look into what the Rebbe is referring to, and what the other signatures say, and to see if there is some sort of. What was that? No, it's his father. His father. He's writing on his father. Zatzal.
My money is out.
Yeah, the Zatzal is going on the Maimon. Maimon, his father, had passed away by then. And this is how we know this is from the 12th century, because Rambam passed away in 1204, so by definition this is a work that was written before 1204. Okay, so that explains that. Now, toward the beginning of this manuscript, and by the way, you go tonight, you could look up this entire manuscript online. Bodleian has the whole thing there. You go through it page by page. It's fascinating. So one of the things that you have over there is this page. This is toward the beginning, and this is, I guess, what you would call some sort of colophon. Now, there's a debate. Some people think this is the Rambam's handwriting because it matches up. Other people think it's not. So I'm not going to take a side on that. Actually, I will. Based on the content, I don't believe it's the Rambam's handwriting.
Why would he have his handwriting in someone else's paper?
Right, that he would have written a note, just like the other one is his handwriting. Right? This was his handwriting. Right. So this is the handwriting. So is this possible? Now, what does it say? Let's read it together. It says like this. Zachibur. I'm not going to get into the difficult words here. I'm just going to give you the general gist. So this chibur belonged to the student, Isaac Pater Lishma, a good guy. His name was Elazar Zal Ulitchia. I think that's Zal Ulitchia, like it's a Zechron Levracha Ulitchia, like Yishav Tchias Mason. Ber Prachia, and we're not going to get into the Samach Tes Rosh Tevis. We'll save that for another time. Okay, he was a really good guy. And he died early because, not his sins, because of other people's sins. Okay, this Elazar commanded, he's the owner of this book, and he commanded, I'm giving this manuscript to Chashem Hinu. He had a Chashem manuscript, the Rambam, it's copied off the Rambam thing. He's giving it to Bezdin. Lo yimacher v'lo yigo. It's not allowed to be sold, and it's not allowed to be used as some other thing. Lo yigo. V'lo yiska b'yadam echalolim. No one should buy it. Everyone should have the right to come to Bezdin and to compare their manuscripts of Rambam against this one. This is a major public service that this boy who's dying wants to have. He doesn't want this going in private hands. He wants this to be a public service for people to be able to copy off. No one's allowed to use this to continuously read it, or not to copy. Remember, one job is, I'm copying. It says here this, I'm writing this. No, he doesn't want this being used to copy. He wants this for the next stage of Hagah, and that is once you hired a cipher to write, which is messy and dirty and things happen, now you bring it over just to do quick checking. That's what he wants this to be. Whoever wants to be Magia Sefer, Yishal Sefer Shitzum Bezdin, he should get any Sefer he wants from Bezdin, including this one. He has to give a mashkin until he brings it back. So if you read this, it's like, I try to think the Rambam wrote this. It doesn't make any sense to me. So, but someone wrote this into the manuscript, let's say, I don't know, 50 years after the Rambam passed away, 100 years after, sometime, you can guess in the 13th century or something, and this is what this book served as. It's an amazing thing. What was that?
The book itself is the Rambam?
Mishneh Torah. What do you mean? Yeah, this is the Mishneh Torah. This is Sefer Mada and Ava. It's the same book. Yeah, this is just earlier on in the manuscript. Okay? This is one of the earliest pages that are there. Okay? Yeah. Was this still chashuv when this guy came along from and threw it back to Oxford? So what happens that he comes in the 1600s and someone in the Jewish community for some money is basically willing to sell it to him, and that obviously shows on a decline. Ruchniistika, perhaps Gashmiistika, just a small piece of information. The Rambam's family, after he passes away, they take over in Mitzrayim, and they're the Negidim. First you have Avram, and then you have a David, and you have a Yeshua. After a few generations, things got really tough for Jews. The Rambam's family picked up, and we know they went to Aleppo. So we know that my Maimoni family is living in Aleppo there. So it makes a lot of sense that this type of, not so much this one, because I don't know exactly the story of this one, but it makes sense. If they're moving, a lot of Jews are moving, so it kind of makes sense that this type of thing ends up over there. And yeah, it is sad in a way. On the other hand, you could ask whether it would have survived if it would have been there. Like, Aleppo Codex, like 4 books of 5 are gone, right? Or 4 books of the Torah are gone. So it could be that it's a blessing. It's hard to know these things.
By that point, so
printing press existed when? 1450s, 60s.
Yes, I'm saying when this guy came
out,
it was no longer needed.
Yes, maybe that was the attitude. We don't need this anymore because of printing. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next evidence of this, what probably is this manuscript, is from the Tshuva of the Radvaz. The Radvaz was Reb David ben Zimra. He lives in the 1500s in Egypt, in Cairo. He's like the Mala Makam of the Rambam, but like 300 years later. And on the left side is just the random title page of his Tshuvas. On the right side, look what he writes. What is the din about milk together, not with meat from a behemoth, but meat from a chaya, like a deer? Is that a biblical violation or a rabbinic violation? So the problem is, the problem is that this guy is writing that the Rambam, as you learn Mishneh Torah, speaks about this a few different times. And one time he writes that chaya and chalav d'oraisa. One time he writes it's derabanan. So this is obviously a big problem. He turns to the Radvaz. He says, "What's going on?" So Radvaz says, "I also had this question. I checked the good manuscripts. In a book that was Huga, that was edited from the Rambam's book, So I looked at a book that was edited off the Sifra Shalarav, Shahaya B'Chalev, which was in Chalev. Chalev is the Hebrew name for Aleppo. The Kach Kosaba Bilchas Mamre, and there it says that it's the Rabbanan. So in other words, if you look at the really good manuscripts, you see there isn't a problem because it's the Rabbanan. What you see here is that Rabaz is saying he looked in a book that was edited off of a Rambam manuscript that was in Aleppo. Is it possible that he's referring to this thing or that family of manuscripts? It's definitely possible, and you see here this same idea of trying to get the best reading from the manuscript. So anyway, so that is the next. What we saw in terms of drafting, and then we saw the Rambam continuously editing, and then we saw one of the manuscripts of the Rambam that was actually reviewed by the Rambam in the sense that we spoke earlier, in that it was copied off of his own manuscript. Okay, so the next section that we're going to look at is artwork. And what you have is that any important book in Judaism that's around in the 1200s, 1300s, or 1400s, mostly those 3 centuries, if it's going to be copied, and it's very, very important, so if a rich person is going to decide to commission it, he's going to insert art into it. So famously with Haggadahs, which we spoke about before Pesach, Machzorim, which we spoke about before Shavuos, and it happened for other words. It happened for other Sfarim here and there, the Tur and some other Sfarim, and Rambam as well. So there's about, not too many, there's about 5, 6, 7 different illuminated Mishneh Torahs, so we're going to take a look at a few of them. So this one here is in the National Library of Israel, and written in the mid-14th century in Spain, though the assumption is that the artwork was added later in Italy 500 or so years later. So here you have in Deos, and on the right side is, you can see on the right page it says Hilchos Avodah Zarah v'Chukos Hagoyim. So what you have before that is Hilchos Deos. So here you have Hilchos Talmud Torah. Hilchos Talmud Torah Perek Shvi. On the right side it says Perek Shvi. That's Hilchos Talmud Torah, and then it ends, and then we go into Hilchos Avodah Zarah. So you see a little artwork, but you may not notice that in the bottom there actually have an image that's painted. So here is the image that's painted at the bottom. What is this? Can you tell?
Oh, it's after getting motion from
No, only answered by the no.
Okay, so here's what it looks like happened. This looks like 2 people saying Lashon Hara about a third person. Now, here's the little bit of a problem. The problem is that Lashon Hara is Hilchos Deos, Perek Zayin. This was painted under Hilchos Talmud Torah, Perek Zayin, which comes right after. Is it possible that it was just a mistake? Like this was supposed to be on Perek Zayin, Hilchos Deos, Lashon Hara, And remember, many of these illuminators are not Jewish, or they're commissioned, and does the person do it under the wrong Perek Shvi? It's definitely a possibility. But the assumption is that that's what this is. This is a Lashon Hara. These two guys on the left are talking about the guy on the right. I'm not sure what the guy on the right, his gestures are. I'm not entirely sure what that is, but we could look into it further. This whole manuscript is also available online on the Israeli website of the National Library. Okay, here's another page. This one here is also from Hilchos Avodah Zarah, a little later, and one of the things it says on this page is that if you serve Avodah Zarah, you get skila. So on the bottom of the page,
Get it thrown off.
yeah.
Get it thrown off and steal.
The guy is on the tree stump. So within this art, you always have, this came up last time, you have kind of space filler art. It's just things that are to amuse the eye, and then you have meaningful art. So I'm assuming that the guy riding on top of a lion on the right or the left, and the person looking down at the top, I'm assuming that's just to fill up space, which is very common in these things. But the teichen here is skila. You have a guy standing on top of what looks like a tree trunk, but I'm not sure, and he's being pushed off a thing. It's not usual for that to be depicted in art. It's not a very a thing, but for whatever reason, they felt that was a good idea to depict over here in this manuscript. Right, so head coverings in this art is interesting. That's a subject for itself. Sometimes you see that there was head covering, sometimes you see that there wasn't, and that obviously depended on who the patron was and what instructions he told the person to do the art.
A whole topic about be depicting at that time.
Yeah, it's random. I'm not entirely sure what inspired it. We want to have skila in our in our thing. Okay.
You have to realize this is a medieval period of time. There's killings everywhere. That's like literally the.
Yeah, but not skila though. So skila is very uncommon. Decapitation is the more common version. So.
I'm saying like today's on the Goyim, when the Goyim were literally doing this to us at this time. It was 1400.
Yes, that's around then. Yeah.
Like you're talking like Inquisition time and maybe a little earlier, but like.
Are these?
About a way to do
So this now is not in a private collection. This is in the National Library of Israel.
The guy who painted it.
Yes, there's a rich guy. Rich guy, he goes to a sefer, he tells him, write me a manuscript, then he goes to an illuminator, very often a Christian, and he says, on this page I want you to make this, on this page I want you to make it. And it's the same thing for the Makzorim and the Agadas and many of that stuff as well. What was that?
He's not donating it to local.
No. And then when people come to his house, he shows them and he feels really important.
Is the color? Is the color common at that time?
Yeah, the art is color. If you're doing art, you're doing color at the time. Okay, one more example from this is about 10 or 15, and then as the manuscript goes along, it stops. It tapers off, and you don't have any more art. So it's just in the beginning. Here you have Hilchos Nesias Kapayim. You can see Perek Arba'asar, B'Shachs Musaf and Ila Koinim Nesim Kapayim, and so they put a guy here in like some booth. Not entirely sure what that is, and he has his hands in the wrong way. This is the types of things you look at. You're like, okay, probably not a Jewish artist, because the Jew wasn't going to sit there and say exactly how you do it. So generally, we put our hands like this, and so the guy goes ahead and makes the picture, but it's not the accurate way of how Kohanim actually hold their hands. Yeah.
All right. In this same period of time, I think we discussed in the past where they were using faces, at least in Ashkenaz in Europe, right? So this is different area. This is more, far. But I'm saying, in theory, in the same period of time, there was times where they were doing art without, like, if you're more religious, basically.
Okay, so just for clarity, the assumption was art. The art was done in Italy and in the 1400s. We don't have any issues with faces anymore when we have the 1400s or in Italy. The face issue is 1200s and 1300s mostly. Yeah. Okay, and even then it was yesh v'yesh as we spoke about last time. Okay, here is just the end of the Rambam, Sefer Shoitim, of this manuscript. As you can see, the guy wanted to end with a flourish, so while he didn't do art, but the Sefer had to, make a pattern, an interesting pattern, and when we do the actual siyum, I think we'll come back to this one and read the final halacha from this version. Okay, now we're going to go to another illuminated manuscript of Rambam. This is called the Frankfurt Mishneh Torah. This is actually not too far from here. It's owned by the Met, the New York Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. A little later, 1457, from Italy. The problem is this is not available online. There's just a few pictures here and there that you can chop. It would really be wonderful to actually see this whole thing, because this was really done epically.
Did it ever get shown off?
Yeah, they do. From time to time, I don't know what's going on now, but from time to time they show it or parts of it. Okay, so what they really did here, what this artist focused on the title page. Sefer Avodah, the first book of each thing, he's going to make a big deal. So I'll show you, they only made available a few of these images. So here's the picture for Sefer Avodah, the beginning of Avodah. You see on the right side, there's someone slaughtering an animal. Avodah is obviously the karbanis. On the left side, someone putting a part of the body on a burning mizbeach. So that's the koyanim, obviously. Now, what you have in the middle looks like what? Halaksamah. Okay, so it looks like, what's it called? The Dome of the Rock. Okay, it's not significant, and we may come back to this in the summer in Beis HaMikdash, but just suffice it to say like this: there is a lot of Jewish art depicting the Beis HaMikdash looking like the Dome of the Rock at this time. 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s. Now you get into why is that? Well, you have the travelers that are going to Israel. They come back with drawings of what Israel looks like, and then that, a certain image sticks in people's head, and then that has meaning. So there are at least 20 examples that I've seen of this. When you want to make a Beis HaMikdash, you basically make this round business. If you want to talk about Golus, like a Golus mentality, this to me captures Golus mentality. We're going to make the Beis HaMikdash, it's going to look like the Dome of the Rock. Pretty sad. We'll show you another example later on.
The letters look like a modern Hebrew font.
Yeah. What do you mean by modern, though?
I just mean like it would look like a font that just came out now.
Okay. One of the things you'll notice is the hey looks like a ches. This was also very common in these initial word panels where they would do that. Never fully understood why that is. Is it a woman or is it just a young boy? That's my assumption.
Often that the boys and the women look the same.
Yeah. Okay. Here's Karbanis, Sefer Karbanis. On the right side, it does look like a woman who is roasting a Karban Pesach over fire, and on the left side, it looks like it's the Pesach celebration before they left Mitzrayim, because two men are standing by the table holding a staff in their hand. So that idea of holding the stick, that was what Yidden were told. The halachas of Karban Pesach are in Sefer Karbanis, so it seems that's what's being drawn here. And for some flourish, they put wine on the table, even though that first Pesach does nothing about wine. They have a bottle of wine with some cups and some other items for the Pesach celebration. Here is Sefer Tara. This is a really great one. It's also connected to Parshas HaShavua, Adam Kiyamus Ba'oil. So they put a tent, and they drop a very fancy-looking guy dead inside the tent, and on the right side there are two ladies who are talking about it, I guess. It's not entirely sure. So that's their image for Sefer Tara. Huh? Yeah, well, yes. The Italian, this is the beginning of the Renaissance, so you have some of that. Okay, here's Nizikin. Now we learn in Nizikin all the damages. So let's start all the way on the top left. You see a donkey falling into a bur, right? That's one of the things you learn about. To the right of that, you have an ox goring a person. Though it's not goring with his horn, it's goring with his mouth. Okay, but it is what it is. Go under that, you see two people killing each other. They are two brothers with the tights, and they're both holding swords, and one is about to poke it into the other one. Okay? And
the guy on the ladder on the left.
And then on the left, you have Gneva. There's a guy in a ladder opening up a window from someone's house and taking stuff out. So it should give you a feel for what you're going to learn about. I'll say it here before I forget to say it. Maybe it will be more attractive to learn Rambam if they gave us, with some images and stuff like that. That could be more fun.
On the floor, looks like his bag to take it.
Yeah. Okay, here's Kinyan. So Kinyan, how do you get something to belong from me to you? So with the animal, you need to do Mashicha. So here you see on the right side, there's a lady, it looks like, who's selling that donkey to a man who's doing Mashicha. On the left side, two people looks like they're trying to figure out how to buy the house. Now the thing is, how do you make a kinyan on a chotzer? How do you make kinyan on a bite? You have to a mafteach, you have to close it, open it. It's not entirely clear what kinyan they're proposing to do on this property, but they're clearly talking about the sale of a house. Mishmatim, I don't have. They didn't make that available. And here's Shoiftim. So just to first of all give you that it's not just art. It's art on a page. Here is the full manuscript of the Rambam. And here is the Shoiftim. And here is a closer up of the image. You have two police officers who are schlepping someone over into in front of four judges. I don't know why they chose four judges. Why don't you use three? It is shy to have a bezin of four, but why would that be your default picture? I don't know the answer to that. Now to the top, though, we get really exciting stuff. This has to do with the end of the Rambam. If you look really well, you'll notice that the top has two knights both of whom are full armor, so you can't even see their faces, and they're wearing crowns, and they have these long lances, and the guy on the left, his lance is intact. The guy on the right, his lance looks like it's shattered into 5 different pieces. They're both on horses, and they're fighting with each other. Why would this be in Sefer Shoftim? Hilchos Mochama, Hilchos Melachim, it speaks about war, so I assume that the halachas of war is what prompted the artist to put this on the top of the thing, and obviously doing it in the medieval way, of knights fighting with each other, which was a part of everyday life. And so this is how they chose to depict war. Okay, so I showed you so far 2 artistic manuscripts. I think we'll do one more. This is called the Kaufman Mishneh Torah. This also is from the 13th. This is from the 13th century, and today it's in Hungary. There was a Yid by the name of Kaufman who was a major collector, and all stuff ended up in Hungary in their Academy of Sciences. They have a lot of stuff there.
When was he?
He's in the 1800s, and he also has Gniza stuff. You got stuff from Gniza, so they have a Gniza collection there as well. Anyway, here is just one page. All we're going to look at one page. This is the introductory page to Sefer Shnei Masar. You see a mix of colors. This is Sefer Kinyan, and there is an image of art down there at the bottom. Let's take a closer look at it. So what you have over here is this actually, I didn't know about this because it could have easily fit this into the Shavuos one. But you have here is what's supposed to be someone representing Moshe Rabbeinu getting 2 luchos out of a very confusing looking thing. Now those luchos have rounded tops. That's something we spoke about then. We don't need to go back to that now. And there's a hole at the top, and there's people in the hole. So this is a very confusing picture. So the assumption is that this is supposed to be Moshe receiving the luchos from Sinai and Kaf Aleim Har Kegigis at the same time. So Har Kegigis, Kaf Aleim Har Kegigis is where you take gigis and you literally drop it like this on top of them, and then the artist makes a hole over here, so then you're able to see the Jews through that. Now, if that's what it is, it could be that that's what this is. So what does that have to do with Sefer Kinyan? I have no clue. I don't know why. There is Hilchos Avodim. In Hilchos Avodim, we say that by Matan Torah you were told that lo avodim, but I don't know. It could just be random, you know. Oh, here we have some space. Let's do something nice. So that's that. Okay, let's move on to the next manuscript. This is artistic without pictures. This is the Lisbon Mishneh Torah. This is from the 15th century in Portugal, not too long before the Jews were forced to convert to Christianity in Portugal, which happened 1497, and here is the page. I wanted to show you about this. This is the opening page where Rambam has his introduction, where he says all the mitzvahs come from Sinai. So that's on the left side. On the right side is what I wanted to show you, because look what the illuminator or the commissioner of this manuscript had psukim written in over here. Number 1, Hoyel Moshe Be'er Es HaTorah Azois. Number 2, V'zeis HaTorah Asher Moshe V'nei Bnei Yisrael. They took 2 psukim talking about Moshe Rabbeinu and placed it here in reference to the Rambam. So in other words, this idea of Moshe V'ad Moshe Lo Kam Kamoshe, the idea that we're dealing here with a Moshe Rabbeinu style figure, there's a long history of that, and you see it all the way here in the 1400s, this idea of using psukim, talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, and applying it to Moshe B'Maimon, and there are other examples of that. So that ends the part of the illuminated. There's another few, not too many, 1 or 2 other illuminated Mishneh Torahs, so each one of them has obviously more. Let's now move to the story of print. So print begins in mid-15th century. So let's go to the first print of the Rambam. When is the first print of the Rambam? You're looking at it right now. Here is the first print of the Rambam. The problem is we don't know exactly when, and we don't know exactly where. So it's a guess. The first dated Jewish book is 1475. We spoke about this in an earlier class. This one, it doesn't have a colophon. Without a colophon, we don't know exactly what happened, but scholars, they get paid a lot to analyze fonts and to make scholarly guesses and assessments. This is assumed to be the first print of Mishneh Torah. You can see it is very simple print, very plain, and it's a guess that it was done in Rome sometime between 1473 and 1475. This is the first printing of the Rambam. By the way, the idea of having Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled, like the halachas, that there is none of that in any of the manuscripts, and there is none of that in the early printings as well. That came later. So in other words, you had a parak, that's it. The parak was one continuous flow. There was no division of Aleph, Beis, Gimel. You do have space divisions that you could see here, that you did have, but not numbers.
Do they correlate with the numbers now, or not even? The spaces?
Did not check. Good question. It doesn't look like there would be an exact correlation. Doesn't look like, because some of them are quite brief here. Okay, so that is the first printing of the Mishneh Torah, and here we go to, this is not the second one, but this one is a famous one. This is the Sansino print. Now, if you were here, hey, Tevis time, we spoke about this page for a second. I'll briefly sum it up. It's a scrunch. First of all, it's comes from the Rebbe's library. This is the first item I'm showing you from the Rebbe's library. And this page is in terrible condition. That's because they don't have the book. They have this was part of the binding. We spoke about it then. This was normal. You took an old book, you cut it up, you made it as part of the binding for a new sefer, and many hundreds of years later, librarians went and opened up these bindings and found older svarim in them. And this is what they did in the Rebbe's library as well. And so they found this is a page from Sefer Kinyan from the Sansino print. These are the very famous Sansino family who print many of the Jewish books in the late 1400s, and this is one page from that printing from 1490. So I showed you two prints that are pre-1500, and the reason that's important is because we call that incunabula. Incunabula means from the cradle of printing. These are very, very expensive. Anything that's printed before the year 1500 is in a league of its own in terms of how much it costs. Halavai, all of us here should have enough money to be able to buy many of such items. Here is a printing from 1509. This is the third print that I'm going to show you. Not that it's the third print, but the reason this is important is because as far as I can tell, this is the first print of the Rambam that incorporates the Ravid. And part of the story of the Rambam is definitely the Ravid and his criticism of the Rambam. He saw a Rambam, right away, when he saw it in manuscript, he wrote his own brief notes to the Rambam, and those survived. The first time they're actually printed is in the year 1509. And here, what happens is that the Rambam does his whole introduction. They published all of the Hasagas HaRavid on the introduction at the end, which is what you're seeing here, one after another. It says Hasagas Sheisik HaRavid HaHagdama HaSefer HaMinyan HaMitzvos, all piled into one. This is 1509 in Constantinople. By the way, at the time, hey Tevis, we also spoke about this, how these guys, they left Spain, they come to the Ottoman Empire, this is a new place, and right away they set up a printing shop, they print hundreds of svarim. And I mentioned at the time, I'll mention it again just now, they predated Islamic printing in the Ottoman Empire 200 years. So in other words, Muslims didn't print in the 1500s, didn't print in the 1600s. The first printing that Muslims did was in 1715, I don't remember right now, 1730. They just had a different culture and attitude to print. Jews rushed to print, and we spoke about this.
Did they ban it or no?
I don't know if they banned it. They definitely looked negatively upon it. They had a very strong, if you want to say it in a politically correct way, you would say, they had a very strong culture for manuscripts, and they really liked that and cherished that and wanted to keep that. Okay.
And was this the first place that put the Ravid?
Yes, this is the first place.
At all?
What was that?
The first place that really directly associates the Ravid and the Rambam, like in booklet, even in written form?
So this is so the people had the Ravid and the Rambam before, but they were kind of two separate booklets, and they would go back between them. This is the first one that I can tell puts the Ravid on the page, and we're going to just read a little closely into one of the Hasagas on that page, where the Ravid very famously writes one of the critiques of the Mishneh Torah, and is Aleph stands for Omer Avram, Savar l'takein v'lo tikein. The Rambam wanted to fix. He didn't end up fixing anything. He left. He abandoned the path from all authors before him. They would bring evidence for what they're saying. And they would write the names of who they're relying on. And this is a great advantage if he would have used that method. Famously, the Rambam has no sources. He doesn't tell you how he gets to his art. He doesn't tell you which Gemara is coming from or anything. So no one knows where he's getting it from. Pei ayin, and then it stops. So that was a printing style. For the first 100 years of printing, they were struggling with margins. How do you deal with margins? So their solution was that if you couldn't fit the whole word, you do as much as you can, and then you start the word over on the next line. So that goes in all the Italian printings in the 1500s. That's the normal style. So ki pei ayin, then on the next line, ki pa'amim rabbis yala alev adayin lesser lahater meirayasim melakam acher. Sometimes you assume that you want to pass in one way. Vilu yadak hish gadol b'menu hiflik shmos l'das acher. So and if I knew that someone else disagreed, I'll change my mind. Anyway, without going too much further into the Ravid, here's where the Ravid lays one of the most foundational critiques of the Rambam. You just wrote your stuff. You didn't tell us where you got it from. You didn't give us your sources. And this is the Ravid's major criticism on the Sefer. Now, in addition to that, when it comes to Hilchas Tshuva, the Ravid has another famous critique in where he says it looks like the Rambam is not believing in Tchias HaMesim, because he says Olam Haba is a spiritual reality. So if Olam Haba is a spiritual reality, so then it must mean Tchias HaMesim is a metaphor, it's not literal, and that's not good. So that's another famous critique, and which leads to the whole discussion of something we did a class on in the past about the burning of the Rambam's books, which happened in the early 1300s after the Rambam passed away. And we'll just read, without getting into the whole story, which is not relevant now, from part of the Alter Rebbe's letter on the subject. So in 1799, that may be a mistake, maybe 1797, there were Vilna Chassidim who wrote out there they can't suffer the persecution anymore. The Mishnayim are driving them crazy. They want to fight back. They can't be pacifists anymore. They need to do something about it. And the Alter Rebbe writes back how this is not the way to go, and we have to continue just taking it and suffering in silence, and we can't fight back. And the fact that they burnt Chassidus Svarim, and it must be very painful for the Chassidim in Vilna who see Chassidus Svarim being burnt. So the Alter Rebbe ends off his letter saying, you think this is new stuff, the burning of books. And this already happened. Learn a little history. Who's greater from the Moshe of his generation? In Sfard, he's the biggest man. They would say in Kaddish, they even put his name into Kaddish. I believe that was only in Yemen. So, why did they do that? They saw he was a great person. They didn't hear about him. They thought he was a heretic. They thought he was a denier. They burnt his books. The first book, Sefer Amada. They didn't burn the rest, but Sefer Amada they burnt, together with Martin Vukim, in the streets. This is in South France. Not in Paris, but in South France. I don't remember the city right now. Was it Montpellier? We spoke about this. What year was this? This was in, I'm going to go with 1232 or something like that.
Where was the Ravid from?
The Ravid lived in Provence, so it's the same region, the same area. That's South France, yeah. Orleans? No, I don't believe that's where they burnt the thing. I don't believe so. And it was Chachamim that said you should burn it. They read what the Rambam wrote and they didn't think maybe they're not understanding, which the Ramban and Radak later clarified. The Alter Rebbe is shortening a major controversy, a major topic that happened at the time, mentioning the Ramban and the Radak's role. After a long time, the Gam Sinasam and the hate abated, the Titzvach Emes Meretz and the truth came out. Yadu Kol Yisrael, all Jews know Moshe Emes is Sarasi Emes. The same thing's going to happen to us. In other words, take a chill. They burnt the book. Don't worry about it. It happened before. You don't have to get so kratz. So that is it's something that happens to Mishneh Torah, and so I'm using the Ravid as, so to speak, a starting point for that. His first comment, again, printed together with the Mishneh Torah for the first time in 1509 in Constantinople. Okay, now...
The Rebbe in touching Dalet Mem asked people to work on Mount Mekomos.
Yes, the Rebbe said that we should write a book of Mount Mekomos, which was done. Yeah, which was published.
Isn't that criticism sort of the opposite of what the Rebbe says? Like, the Rebbe didn't really care where the source came from, meaning once someone sort of like what we're saying, based on what someone possibly based on the Rambam, even if he changes his mind later.
I mean, I guess you can have that discussion, but really it's a broader topic. Let's leave it. Let's leave it in the interest of going further. Here is. We move to Italy, and in Italy, this is where the real powerhouse of printing is. And you have, first of all, the non-Jew who we spoke about once, Bomberg, who prints a Rambam, but I'm not showing you that. And then we move to 1550. In 1550, here I alluded to this in a previous class if you were here, there was a huge machlokas over two simultaneous printings of the Rambam. So, first you had what was called the Bragadini printing. And then here's the title page of the Bragadini printing. First notice on the top, Ushafta Mayim Besase, Mi Maimone HaYeshua, again, putting the Rambam's name instead of Mi Mayone HaYeshua, Mi Maimone HaYeshua. There's a non-Jew by the name of Bragadini, and he publishes in 1550 a version of Rambam together with Haaretz from Maharam Padua. Rabbi Meir of Padua was a big rav in Padua at the time. Padua is not too far from Venice, and they print this Rambam. Now, what happened was that there was another non-Jew at the time whose name was Justiniani, and he was also a publisher in Venice, also of Jewish books, and he didn't like that idea, so he decided to undercut, and in the same year he printed his Mishneh Torah with the same ha'aris from Meir Padua. Now it's important. Meir Padua partnered with Bragadini. They were partners. They both made an investment in the printing, and now Justinian is taking their intellectual work and he's doing it on his own. This led to a major controversy. Maram Padua, here, if you look, they're also mean to him. In their title page over here, they write, and we're also going to include the notes from Chacham Echad V'Roish Mirabane Padua, Harav Reb Meir, and they go on to say, even though really he shouldn't have put his Zars on the page, because some people will like them, some people won't like them, so why would you put them on the page? But anyway, we decided that we're going to print them too, just in case someone likes them. So it's like, we're going to use your work, put it on the page, but at the same time we're going to shtech you and be mean to you. This was non-Jewish competition over the Jewish publishing market, which was serious. So Maram Padua turned to the Rama, who was in Poland, and asked that there should be a ban against buying Justiniani's books. Copyright. And that's, so this is really the beginning of a copyright sugya in halacha. You always come back to this. Any shir you're going to hear that's going to do copyright in Jewish law, they're always going to come back to this thing, the tshuva the Rama. The Rama Taka said that Justiniani is wrong and you only should buy the Bragadini Rambam and you shouldn't buy the Justiniani one. There's a lot more on this. It's a whole parsha, it's a whole sugya, it's a fascinating piece of history. Now, here is, I showed you, this is the title page for volume 1, this is in the Rebbe's library. Here is the title page of volume 2, and here you'll notice what I alluded to before. This is the printer's emblem, and look what it says here. It says, Gadol yeh kvoid habayis hazeh, Amar Hashem tzvakos, and it says, Beis HaMikdash, and it's at a building that's clearly modeled on the Dome of the Rock. So this is just a second example, and this was the printer's emblem for Justiniani. As you see, it says on the line right under that, it says, Antonio Justinian, Shmoyna L'chodesh Shvat, Shnas Shin Yud Aleph, that's 1551 is when he publishes. This is his emblem. But again, it's his emblem for Jewish books. This is for the Jewish market. He's giving them a symbol of the Beis HaMikdash. Again, Golos Lifnim Mi Golos. Okay, here's inside the book. I was just flipping through it, and then obviously, if you're looking well, you're like, what is those black lines going on over there? Okay, this is the Justiniani Rambam and Hilchos Shavuos in Parak Echad. I happen to be not making a siyum. I'm learning the Parak Echad track, and we just learned Hilchos Shavuos. So I got curious, and it didn't take too long to figure out what happened over here. Here is the deletions. You could actually read through the deletions, and this is what it says. This is Agoy's Maimonides. The Agoy's Maimonides is a commentary written from Ashkenaz on the Rambam, and it says Hilkach. Oisam Yehudim, this is what it said. Those Jews, Shemashpiyan Oisam Asarim, Shalalates Maratzam. We're the parts. We're the ruler. Says, you can live here, but you need to make a shvua that you're never going to leave this land. You have to stay here. Right? In Russia, they don't let Jews leave, so you have to always say, you're not allowed to leave. They could make a shvua. I'm not going to leave. But V'libam Yakshavu Hayoim. In their heart, they'll think, I'm not going to leave today. In other words, they can mislead the God. Okay, now what's going on over here? You can't make me make a shvua. I can live wherever I want. You're being unjust by making me take a shvua that I have to live with for the rest of my life. Okay, so Torah in that case says I'm basically allowed to lie to you, and I make a shvua. Now I'm not allowed to make a full shvua. So I say, I'm not going to leave. And in my heart I think it means today. This is what it says here. And even if he forced me to say, no, say you swear you're not going to leave your whole life, I could think in my mind, I'm not going to go my whole life if I don't need to. And you add that qualification, so to speak, in your mind. And if you do it verbally, quietly, it's much better. This is Lashon Rabbeinu Yehuda Shekasa B'Shem Ri. This is Balei HaTosos. Okay, so what happened here? In Italy, after 1553, is the story of censorship. That's when the church says, okay, anything that's against Christians, we aren't going to let it out. Now, censorship can mean a few things. One thing is, you're printing a book, we're not going to let you print this section, which happens. We're not going to let you print Maseches Avodah Zarah, or we're not going to let you print a certain story about Christianity in the Gemara. You got to take it out. That's one element to censorship. Another element to censorship is a knock on the door. Come, we're inspecting your books. something you don't like, we're going to erase it. Who's doing this work? Jews who converted to Christianity. So they're opening up, they're like, oh, I'll go to Maimonides. Oh yeah, we remember those passages, and they go and they start deleting it. Now here, I don't know if it's because of time, but you literally could read through. I was able to type out the entire thing from, is it because of the resolution of the picture? Maybe wrote it out. Yeah, I mean, so, but it could be the ink was much darker, but this was one form of censorship Jews in Italy had to live through for quite a while. And there's a lot of this is just one sample of that. So thank God, Baruch Hashem, we don't have to deal with that type of thing anymore.
They left some words in the middle.
Yeah, so I don't get that. It's like, I mean, this doesn't, what do you mean it doesn't read right? Yeah, Hilkach Oisam Shemaspiyim Shatov Yoz, I don't know what happened there. In other words, he should have just deleted the whole thing. I don't know. I can't help you with that. I didn't understand that. Okay, there are other deletions in the Sefer that were done as well. Okay, here is moving along on the next important development in the Mishneh Torah is when it gets printed by Yosef Karo. Yosef Karo printed in 1574. You see, it says Shnas Shin Lamed Daled. This was printed by Bragadini, who had originally done 20 years earlier with Maram Padua. And what's new about this is this one gets the Kesef Mishnah. It gets the Magid Mishnah, it gets the Kesef Mishnah, and here it mentions Rabbi Yosef Karo as alive. Look at the fourth line. It says, L'goyin Hamufla, Kvoid Mereinu Arav, Yosef Karo, what's it called? Natre Rachmano Parke. That was only written for living people. Yosef Karo passed away around this time, I don't remember the exact date, with Shin Lamed Daled, Shin Lamed Hey. Either way, he sent the stuff, there's no printing in Sfat. He sent the stuff to Venice, printed over there, they printed it there. I don't have volume 4, but if you look at volume 4, there's volume 3. Volume 4, printed the next year, already says Hatzal. Zecher Tzavik Levracha. Or 2 years later, says Zecher Tzavik Levracha. By that time, he had passed away. Here's the inside of the page, where we got the classic page of the Rambam. Kesef Mishnah on one side, Magid Mishnah on the other side. Kesef Mishnah is his commentary. Now, this page here, I'm showing you here, this is the Rebbe's library here in New York. This page here, from inside the book, this is from the library in Russia that we spoke about, from the Rebbeim's collection, and we spoke about that at a previous class. And here you see what we spoke about then. The back is where once it said the Polyakov collection with a Greek pi, and then it was changed to a shin to be Schneerson. This was done about 20 or so years ago, where they made that change after Chabad identified the book. Anyway, so that's that in terms of some of the major turning points in terms of the printing of the Rambam. So we kind of started out all the way with the drafting, and we brought it all the way down to the world of printing with all that wonderful twists and turns along in between. So with that, let's now actually go ahead and read the final halacha of the Rambam for a siyum, and we'll go back to that earlier print, that earlier artistic version that I showed you before from Spain, and we'll read the last halacha there. Says the Rambam, where are we? Ulefichach. What's the last? There's no halacha numbers here. Help me out. Ovois Hazman. Okay, so you see, it's 2 lines from the bottom and the wide. Ovois Hazman lo yasham lo rav, lo mochama, abbreviated, lo kina, the sachrus shahatoiva. You see a lot of abbreviations here. Tia mushpaas harbe will be in abundance. V'chol hamadan yimutzuim ke ofar. Lo yiyeh. Eisek Kol, that's squeezed in. Eisek Kol Yisrael, Ela Ladas Es Hashem. I hope some of you were here for the Hashem. Any of you were here for the Hashem class? With the name, right? You see here? 3 yuds, right? One on top of the other. So if you were here, you know what this is. If you weren't here, then you don't know why Hashem's name is written that way. Okay? Well, the Fichach, Yiyu, Chachamim G'dolim, we will be great Chachamim, V'yodas, I don't know. Dvarim Hasturim, we will know the concealed things. V'hamukim, we don't have that in our Rambam, and the deep things. V'yasigu das boiram kefi koyach ha'adam, and we will understand the mind of our Creator, so to speak, in accordance with our ability. Shanamar, as the pasuk says, Kimala es Hashem. Here again, you see as 3 yuds with one on top of the other 2. Kamayim layom echazim, as water covering the seabed. Brich rachmana desayot. So that's in terms of the seal. And in terms of the Haskalah, we'll go back to that 12th century manuscript, which we are told was Hugam Misifri of the Rambam. It's very small, but we'll go like this: Perek Rishon, Yisoid HaYisoidais, Va'amud HaChochmos. It is the pillar of all pillars, and the Amud, also the foundation, the pillar of all wisdom. Leida Sheyesham This one says, Alekam Matzi Rishon, there is that first existence, Vu Mamsi Kol Haninsoim, and he brings into existence all existences, the Chol Haninsoim, I can't really read, Min HaShamayim V'Aretz V'Masha B'neihem, Lo Nimtzu Elam Ha'amitis Himatzai, and everything that is in existence, from top to bottom, only comes about from him. And there it goes on to continue with the next halachas. Anyway, the Rambam is obviously a fascinating sefer, and it's a great time and opportunity for us to figure out how we could tap in, whether it's in any of the three ways of learning it, if it's the Gimel Prakim, if it's the Parak Echad, or if it's the Sefer HaMitzvahs. Anything that we do, it's just a profound way of connecting to the Rebbe. This was the Rebbe's idea. The Rebbe put this out there as an opportunity for us to become knowledgeable about Judaism, which is a good thing probably. So, if we should all be in this era to get better at this, and I hope you enjoyed the shir, and Atzlach Rabba, everyone, have a wonderful summer, and